Hello, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for joining us here on the very first episode of the Dorks Talk Sports Podcast.
Yeah!
I am one of your hosts. You know me, it's Jeremy, and joining me is a man who needs no introduction, Mr. J Smooth himself.
Hey guys, what's going on?
You can find us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Snapchat. Just kidding about the Snapchat for now.
Alright, enough of the chit chat. Let's jump right into it, taking a look here at the AFC North. Now, I feel the AFC North is a good starting spot for us, not only because you and I are both Steeler fans, J Smooth, and
Indeed.
a majority of the people that'll end up listening to this podcast are also Steeler fans.
Most likely.
But I feel like there's been no team this offseason that's generated the most buzz than the Cleveland Browns.
Can't argue with you there.
Yeah, don't check your headphones. I said that right. The Cleveland Browns. And hey, it's probably well warranted. They've made a ton of offseason moves. Let's start with them. Yeah, let's look at them. What's one of the moves they've made that you certainly like the most?
Well, I am not going to hide it any longer. I think the wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr., also known as OBJ, is their biggest acquisition. But they also brought in Kareem Hunt, but he is suspended for a while. And they brought in some secondary help to deal with the departure of talented Jabril Peppers.
Right. Peppers is a big loss for them, I'd say. But my favorite move that they've made this offseason are the defensive moves, where they've brought in one Olivier Vernon. I think that's a huge pickup for them.
I like that as well.
Sheldon Richardson on the defensive line. That's another big pickup. They picked up, I believe, Eric Murray, and then they drafted Greedy Williams. I think that's going to be
That's right.
That's going to be a big move for them. I think he's got talent. It'll be interested to see how well he plays in the backfield for them. Yeah, so I do like the moves they've made defensively. I think, they may have given up a little too much for OBJ. I like the Kareem Hunt signing, although Nick Chubb in his own right is a really good running back. I'm just not a big fan of the hype this season on them. They did obviously turn it around last year when they finally moved on from Hugh Jackson, which was a great move. And then they ended up re-signing Freddie Kitchens as their head coach. And they were able to win 7 games last year, which is a lot for them, considering they won 1 game in a 2-year span. But they ended up winning, I think it was 5 of the last 8 games of the season. Those 5 wins were against teams with losing records. The 3 losses came against teams with winning records. So it's going to be interesting to see just how well they played this season. The talent's certainly there, but I think the big key for me is the coaching and whether or not they're going to be able to coach that talent, because as we've seen in Pittsburgh, talent doesn't win it alone. The coaching is the most important part of the NFL. So what are your thoughts on the Browns this season there, Jay Smooth?
I agree with you. Tons of talent. It's all about getting everyone to gel together. I think this team is going to be really good, mainly because of the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. The Browns have drafted so many quarterbacks over the years, but I think they finally got it right. I know there was questions about taking him first overall a couple years ago over some other guys, but I think he is the man that they have been after for quite some time.
Yeah, I certainly can't disagree with that. It seems like Baker Mayfield is finally the franchise quarterback they've been searching for so long. Yeah, and you're right. There were questions between him, Sam Darnold, a couple other guys, maybe Lamar Jackson even, Josh Rosen. But I think they did the right move in drafting Baker Mayfield. At the time, I was thinking they would be better off drafting Saquon Barkley because he is a game changer. I think he is a once-in-a-lifetime kind of running back. It's a quarterback-driven league. Baker Mayfield seems to be the guy that's going to be able to take them at least towards the hump and see if we can get them over the hump as well. I know you're buying the hype. I'm not really buying as much as the hype on them as well. I think they got to go out there and prove it before I actually give into it. But we'll see. That's why they play the games. And they certainly have a favorable schedule, I think, in trying to get them over back into the playoffs, maybe even a division title. But we'll see that a little later on. Let's take a look here at the Pittsburgh Steelers next then. They finished second in the division last season. They went 9-6-1 after a really good start. I think they were 7-2-1 at one point before dropping, near the end of the season, which just led to the ridiculousness of Antonio Brown. But they've moved on from him. What's one of the key moves they've made that you really like?
Honestly, I am a big fan of the fact that they lost 2 of the most talented players in the league on the offensive side. But my favorite acquisitions have to be on the defense this year. Obviously, drafting Devin Bush is going to be huge.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of Shazier a little bit. But I think Mark Barron, maybe a little under the radar a little bit, I think Mark Barron is a very good linebacker, and both of them
Certainly.
together is going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Barron, he was a starting middle linebacker for the Rams team that went to the Super Bowl last year. So I do think he's being overlooked a little bit, mainly because of how they moved up to get Devin Bush, which I think was the first time in about 13 years or so, maybe more than that, they moved up to get a guy in the draft. I think Palomalu was the last time they actually traded up to grab a guy.
It's been a while.
So it shows you how much they think of Devin Bush. But yeah, he's a big one. I do like the drafting Justin Lane as well. I think he's a Cleveland kid. So it'll be interesting to see how he's able to play in the backfield, the defensive backfield. And then I like the Benny Snell draft pick as well. I think he's definitely going to have a change of pace for them in the running back position. Connor's obviously got it on lockdown. I like what we're seeing out of Jalen Samuels, especially this offseason, especially these preseason games so far. Wasn't he a tight end in college?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, so they converted him to running back because he's a big guy and seems to run the ball really well. So they definitely have a lot of depth there at running back. And I think they're definitely going to benefit from addition by subtraction, losing Antonio Brown. And then, I mean, Bell didn't play last year, but he's finally gone. There's nothing to worry about with him anymore. So it'll be interesting to see if they're able to come out of that shadow that those two players had on the team and see if they can have a more cohesive unit, see if they're able to compete. They got a lot of tough games this year, but they get a lot of the tougher opponents at home, including Seattle, Indianapolis, and the Rams. They got to go to New England, which they historically struggle at. They go to the Chargers. So pretty tough schedule, but it's fairly balanced, I think. I can see them taking the division this year. I think it's going to come down to them in Cleveland, but we'll get to more on that later.
This is going to be a big year for Juju Smith-Schuster. He's finally out of Antonio Brown's shadow, but also on the radar of every other defense they're going to be playing. So I'm interested in to see how he handles being that number one. They did get Dante Moncrief in the offseason, who I think is a comparable number two. And James Washington has also provided some highlight plays last year and in the preseason. So I think they have a solid receiving course, but it is all going to fall on Juju and how he handles the pressure.
Right? Yeah, it's always interesting to see how these young guys step into a number one role when a guy like Antonio Brown leaves. I mean, off-field issues aside, Antonio Brown put up historic numbers for the Steelers, so his loss is definitely going to be felt on that roster. But I think Juju, he's a good kid, he got a good head on his shoulders. I think he's able to step into that role. And like you said, they have a ton of wide receiver depth, not to mention the draft pick, Deontay Johnson, who's looked solid so far this preseason to go along with James Washington and Dante Moncrief. We can't forget guys like Brian Switzer, Eli Rogers, these possession short route guys. So, I mean, the offense is definitely there for the Steelers.
Don't forget Vance McDonald, too.
The Vanimal.
Stiff arming people all over the place.
Never forget him. So they definitely have the offensive depth, but I'm more of a fan of what they did defensively this year. And then, we'll see how we have them finish in this division here later on in the episode. For right now, let's move to the team that actually won the division last year, the one Baltimore Ravens, who won 10 games last year, took advantage of the Steelers and their collapse, and actually had a playoff game, although they lost to the Chargers. What do you like about the Ravens offseason so far?
Well, they lost a lot of key guys on the defense. Both edge guys. Terrell Suggs, longtime Raven. Zadarius Smith, their captain back there, C.J. Mosley, and Eric Weddle in the secondary. But they did bring in some guys to replace them, most notably Earl Thomas and Shane Ray on the edge there. So they have historically always been a phenomenal defense, and I think they might drop off a little bit this year, but they're still going to be really good.
Yeah. I do really like the Earl Thomas signing. I think he's a really good safety, and I think a change of scenery is really going to benefit him. Yeah, I really like what they've done defensively and getting some of these guys, but I really like them bringing in Mark Ingram and drafting Marquise Brown. I think they've added a lot of offensive help for Lamar Jackson because from what it sounds like with John Harbaugh, the way he's talking this preseason, they're going to be putting a lot on Lamar's legs, and I'm not sure exactly how he's going to be able to handle it. I mean, we know Lamar, he's talented. There's no question there. He can run the ball. He can throw the ball. That's not the issue. The issue is going to be if he's going to be able to make passes when the time comes. Those like deep 10-yard and outs late in the game to get them within field goal range. Those are the kind of throws that he's going to have to make. There's no question that he's going to run the ball. He ran the ball a lot last year, and I think they're going to have him run the ball a lot this year. But they're going to definitely need Mark Ingram to help share that load. And I do really like them drafting Marquise Brown. I think he's a real good talent there out there.
Super fast. He destroyed my Mountaineers last year, and he is probably the fastest guy in the draft.
Yeah.
They also brought in receiver Miles Boykin.
I do like that move.
Notre Dame, I think.
Yep.
And he's not bad himself, so they definitely upgraded their receiving core, which was needed because they were lacking there last year. Teams have another year on Lamar Jackson, so this will be a test for him this year.
Yeah, like you're saying, they have tape on him now, so they're going to be able to game plan for him. They know exactly how much running the Ravens are going to do, and like, yeah, that's why for me, the Ravens are going to be a bit of an enigma team this season because I just don't know how a running specific offense in the modern NFL is going to play. Because we all know this is a passing league, it's a quarterback league. It's quarterbacks to go in there, make the throws. Sure, they run the ball, they can make plays with their legs, but it's also mostly on if they're able to make the plays with their arms. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see just how well Lamar plays this year. I mean, we saw he was real good last year for him. He helped turn their season around, save John Harbaugh's job. But, there's no more smoking Joe. He's not there anymore. He's moved
Wacko
on.
Flacco.
Yeah, so it's all going to be on Lamar's shoulders this year. I mean, like we said before, it's a quarterback-driven league. Quarterbacks are the key component for any offense. Specifically, this offense, it's going to all fall on Lamar. Time will tell if it's going to work out for them or not. And then bringing up the bottom of the division, we have Cincinnati Bengals. What are a few offseason moves that you've liked from them so far?
Well, they lost tight end Tyler Croft, who was always hurt, so probably good anyways. They lost Vontez Burfict.
Oh,
They lost Cedric Oboye. But they picked up a very good guard, John Miller, and they drafted some good offensive linemen as well. And they also drafted a pretty solid tight end, Drew Sample. So their offensive line should be a little better this year, which is where one of the areas where they were lacking last year.
yeah, I'm not big on Cincy this year. They finally moved on from Marvin Lewis finally after 17 long seasons.
It's about time.
Yeah, I mean he did have success with them. I don't think there's any arguing that. But yeah, these last few years have just kind of drug on there for Cincy. I know a lot of Bengals fans have been wanting to move on from him for a while now, and they have with Zach Taylor, former assistant for Sean McVay. One of these young wizard kids looking to come in and
Seems to be the trend.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see because they got a lot of young offensive talent there to go along with Andy Dalton at quarterback. Really like Tyler Boyd. Really like Joe Mixon. I think they're both possible game changers. But again, it's going to come down to AJ Green and how healthy he is. He's dealing with an ankle injury right now. So, if he's out for an extended period of time, that's really going to set back their offense, I think.
They also have speedster John Ross as well. He's dealing with an injury as well, but I don't think it's quite what AJ Green's is.
Yeah,
They
and
definitely have some talent there at receiver.
certainly he adds a big dynamic for them on offense with the speed he brings. And I do like as well, we were talking about the offensive line, them drafting Jonah Williams out of Alabama. He's a really big guy. He's going to be left tackle, so he's going to be tasked with protecting Dalton's backside, which is always important here in the NFL. And then Tyler Eifert, he's still on the team. Is he going to be healthy? He's not been healthy the last few years, so it'll be interesting to see if he's actually able to stay on the field because he's a big weapon for them. But yeah, just there's not much on this team that I like. Burfict, while he has all the issues that, we all know about, he produced out there for him. He was a big part of that defense, and now he's gone. So it'll be interesting to see just how big of an impact he had on them. And I just do not have much faith in the Bengals being too competitive this season. I think they're in a bit of a transition mode now that they're moving on from Lewis as Zach Taylor takes over this franchise.
Let's not forget Joe Mixon, though.
Right?
He could be a star.
Yeah, he certainly has a talent. If he can, seems to have taken care of all the off-field issues he's ever had. And if he can just focus on his game, he's a game changer. I think he's going to cause a lot of havoc here in the AFC North for the next few years. Any other thoughts on the Bengals this season there, Jay Smooth?
No, I think this is a tough division, and the Red Rifle is going to struggle this year a little bit.
Yeah, it's they've had success recent years, but injuries, age, transition, and the coaching staff's going to catch up to them, I think. So it's going to be a long season there for Cincinnati. Okay, so who do you have taken the division this year? Who do you have winning this division there, Jay Smooth?
I have the Steelers and the Browns tying at 11-5.
Tiebreaker.
With the Browns winning in a tiebreaker.
Oh, that's big. Well, I mean, I agree with you. I have the Steelers actually winning the division, but I do think it's going to come down to the Steelers and the Browns for the first time in a long time. I mean, I have the Steelers winning 10 games, the Browns winning 9 games. I think whichever team wins the division, going to be right in that area, 9 or 10 wins, just because, like you said, this is a tough division. Both teams have relatively difficult schedules, so I think they're just going to end up beating each other up for most of the season. And, I think it's going to take about 10 wins to win this division then.
I agree. I think the Ravens aren't far behind, though. I have them at 9-7. I think they're going to be in the mix as well.
Yeah, I believe I have them at 7-9. I keep going back and forth, 7, 8, 9 wins. I think it's just too hard to make a determination on them, I think, because of don't know really how to tell how Lamar Jackson is going to play this season.
It's all about the development of Lamar Jackson.
If he can play well, I think the Ravens will definitely be a wild card. player in this division this season, so he could easily turn this into a 3-team race. And then I got the Bengals bringing up the rear with about 4 wins this season. Just not much there for me to buy
I
on
have
them
them
this
there.
season.
I give them 5, but yeah, there's potential there. They're going to struggle this year.
Yeah, like I said, I think their future is probably a lot brighter than some other teams, just because they do have the young offensive talent and they got a good young coach there. It'll be interesting to see if he's able to transition what he learned under Sean McVay and how he coached under Sean McVay. If he's able to kind of have the similar impact that McVay had in LA, although McVay had a ton more talent on the offense and defensive side of the ball. All right, now we can move on to our player portion of this podcast. Let's take a look at overrated players. Who's your overrated player for this division?
I'm going to go with aforementioned Lamar Jackson, quarterback of the Baltimore Ravens. I just don't think he is a great pocket passer, and I think that is what he is going to have to do this year for the Ravens to be successful.
Right, yeah. I mean, I heard a lot of talk at the end of last season about how Lamar and Baker Mayfield were the young guys taking over this division. So there's certainly a lot of hype around Lamar. I don't know if it's as warranted as it is for Baker Mayfield. But speaking of Baker Mayfield, my overrated player is one Odell Beckham Jr. I
Wow.
don't think he's worth what they gave up for him. I mean, he is definitely a legitimate number one receiver, but they had just gone out and signed Jarvis Landry the year prior, and he's a really good receiver. He definitely provides a complement to OBJ, but OBJ, I think he's a great fantasy player, great highlight guy. Definitely brings the memes, but
Absolutely.
I just don't think for what they gave up for him, I don't think it's going to be worth it in the end. They could prove me wrong. Him and Baker Mayfield may gel from day one, but I just don't see it on my end here. All right, so how about we take a look here at some underrated players then? For me, my underrated player I have is Joe Mixon. He's still a young guy who I think probably should have made the Pro Bowl last year, but he was snubbed there. And then in the NFL top 100 players voted on by the players, he didn't make that list either. So I feel like he's kind of overlooked by a lot of not only fans and the media, but also players in the league as well. I don't know if that's because of his youth, as far as being in the league, or any off-field issues he may have had prior. But yeah, I definitely think he's more underrated and definitely has that potential to be a big time game changer here for the Bengals.
I think that's a good call. He's definitely a workhorse type back, and I think it's a lot to do just because he's simply on the Bengals. It seems like
Right.
everyone is always sleeping on the Bengals. I'm not sure why, but that's just the way it is. I think he is up there, maybe top 5 potential running back, but yeah,
I would agree.
just flies under the radar.
Certainly. So who's your underrated guy there then?
I'm staying with the Bengals. I have Carlos Dunlap, defensive lineman.
Oh yeah,
He's kind of the anchor to their entire defense.
certainly is.
They kind of go as he goes, and he's a great locker room presence as well. And I think he's the key for their defense, which I am not too sure about this year.
Right. Yeah, like I said, I don't think they have much to go home on this year on either side of the ball, but Carlos Dunlap is definitely one of the better players in the league, and I think he was overshadowed for a while with all of Burfikt's nonsense. But yeah, I definitely could get behind you on him being an underrated player. So then let's move on to the breakout star for this division. Who do you see is breaking out this season?
I have tight end from the Cleveland Browns, David Njoku. I think this is
pick.
the year he gets unleashed. He's still a little bit raw, but he is a freak athlete, big, fast, and with all the attention going to OBJ and some to Jarvis Landry as well, rightfully so. Njoku is going to see tons of single coverage, and he's going to be lined up a little bit all over the place. And Baker Mayfield likes to spread it around, so I think he's going to have a huge year.
Yeah, he's Njoku's probably a little bit down the line on the offensive weapons they have. As you mentioned, OBJ, Landry, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt when he gets back. But yeah, he's definitely got the talent and the potential to be a huge breakout guy for them. For me, my breakout star is going to be Juju on the Steelers. He's had a couple good productive years for them so far in that offense, but now, as we both know, AB is gone. So this is Juju's time. See if he can step up to be the number one guy there in Pittsburgh, and I really see him doing that this year. And I think you kind of agreed with me earlier there, Jay Smooth. So it's definitely Juju's.
I like that pick for sure. I'm not quite as sure as you are on him completely taking over and stepping up, but I think he has a good chance. He definitely has the physical tools, and he seems like he has a good head on his shoulders, and he seems like a team player for sure, which is something his predecessor might not have been.
Yeah, he definitely leaves it all out there on the field, as we've seen. So let's kind of wrap up this podcast here with our final thoughts on the season. What's your final thought for the AFC North?
I think it's going to be your typical physical smash mouth type of football that we all love to see here in the Northeast. And I think it's going to come down to the Steelers and Browns. The Ravens are going to be right there, but I just don't think they have quite enough to compete with the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. That's right, the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I certainly agree with you there. It's definitely going to come down to the Steelers and the Browns, but I'm not going to sleep on Baltimore. They certainly have the potential to make this a 3-team race, but I'm just not buying the hype for Cleveland this season. It's one of those cases where I just have to see it before I believe it.
That's understandable. One thing's for sure, though. We are like everyone else. We are sleeping on the Bengals after all.
Indeed, it's certainly not sleepless in Cincinnati. Everybody's sleeping there this season. Well, that wraps up this episode of our podcast. I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen. And remember, you can catch us on Google Play, SoundCloud, and on YouTube.
As usual, follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Check us out on our next episode where we discuss the NFC East.
You will not want to miss that one.
See you then.
Later on.